Welcome to the Reds Report, sponsored by theterrorstore.com. See, Steve, I got it in 3 seconds.
Well done, mate. Excellent.
Thank you.
That's another cup for me.
Looking back at a very successful championship season for Valérien Ismaël and his young Reds, and also looking ahead of the first leg of the semi-final of the playoffs, Barnsley versus Swansea on Monday evening at Oakwell. With us, as always, he's the yin to my yang, and when I'm playing football, he's the Charlie to my Chaplin. It's Steve Andrews. Steve, how you doing?
Good evening, sir. Very well, thank you.
Also with us, when I say veteran, I mean he's been on quite a few times, nothing else. Leon Wobschall from the Yorkshire Post. Leon, how you doing?
Veteran, that's what my wife calls me. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Excited for the playoffs. Been a long season, but this should be good. This.
And also with us is Ian Hope. Now, it used to be the halftime pie. He's now reinvented himself. He chats about all things football, but mainly the Reds. That's about right, isn't it, Ian?
It is, yes.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me on.
That's no problem at all. Listen, first of all, we'll start with you, Leon. What an amazing feat for not only the team, but the club and everybody that works there, that our season is still going. Because I think everybody would have been happy with 4th or 5th from bottom. And, well, that didn't turn out as expected, did it?
Well, it's just Hollywood stuff, isn't it? I mean, we all remember obviously watching the scenes at Griffin Park, staying up by the skin of the teeth. Then, obviously, start to next season, a little bit ropey. Was it 7 games in? No victory. The manager, and the manager's gone, and for all intents and purposes, it looked like another dogfight, didn't it? But then, obviously, something magical has happened. There's probably no other real word to describe it. I mean, the club have done well with their appointments. The last 3, really, obviously getting Daniel in and getting Gerhard initially, but this guy's taking it on to a whole new level, hasn't he? He's total class. He's a leader, and things just snowballed in December, and it's been unbelievable.
Ian, when did you start sort of believing that this could be a season more about just survival?
I think when they're in the middle of that run after the Chelsea defeat, to be honest, I mean, I wrote, I think before Christmas, that I took mid-table mediocrity, to be honest, for a season after so many ups and downs, even going back to probably the playoffs in 2016. They have unfortunately been a bit of a yo-yo club between either too good for League One, not quite good enough for the Championship. And I think after what happened last season at Brentford, you'd have took, well, you said 4th or 5th and bottom, but you'd have took mid-table and no dramas. Yeah. But I think you saw bits of it before Christmas, but I think once that run kicked in after the Chelsea game, you started to think something's happening here.
Yeah. Steve, when Valérien Ismaël came in, I remember, we had to use Wikipedia, other websites.
I had to call in loads of favours to get to know even the slightest little bit about him, didn't I?
What? Because the appointments, I mean, Leon referred to it. The appointments of Stendel got us up at the first time of asking. Struber, we stayed up under Struber, and then Valérien Ismaël came in, and all three is sort of like that style of football. If you look at Valérien Ismaël, yes. In the transfer window, he added some players. Liam Kitchen, we've not really seen much of, but Carlton Morris and Daryl DK, who would come. But for large parts, these are the same team. This is the same group as last season. What is he doing different? Because we seem to be getting an extra 10, 15% out of every one. And when you've got 11 on the pitch, that makes a big difference.
I think Leon actually hit it nail on the head. He's taking it up to that next level. Stendel, I mean, we all love Stendel. Brought us back up. Struber, in a way, just sort of kept us there, but only just. I've got to be honest. I'm not saying he brought anything new to the team. He just sort of maintained it. I suppose he was just looking after it in a way for when Ismaël stepped in. I mean, we've said it many times. Ismaël just came out of nowhere. I managed to find out a few bits and bats about him when he was appointed. A little bit of background and stuff. I think the main thing that people knew about him was that he'd had a season at Palace and that he'd been at Bayern Munich. But other than that, Little bit of dipping his toe in managerial waters. But other than that, we knew nothing. Yet he's come in with a style. He's got an aura about him that just seems to inspire players. I mean, the players that we've got now mainly are the players we had at the start of the season. Like you say, he's brought a couple in. Don't forget Callum Britton, your favourite. He's come in and it ground running. But it's just what he's done mentally. We know the fittest have been since I've been watching them. They really are. But he's just instilled a confidence that they just seem to be feeding off.
Is there a degree of luck here as well, Leon, that the only reason he was available or to be appointed is because he was sacked, suspended, whatever, by Lask, because he started training with his team. Was it 2 or 3 days before sort of physical contact was allowed? We don't have much luck as a club. That's probably the best bit of luck we've ever had, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was obviously, what was the other guy? It was Zoniger, wasn't it? He was the other
Zoniger, yeah.
Who was in for it. Yeah, I mean, que sera, sera. It's what will be. Things have really dropped into place. I mean, I think obviously he's tremendous on the training ground, but I just think getting those wins in. I mean, he got a couple of good wins in November, but that little run in December when you win in tight games. I think that they must have won about 5 or 6, I think, in December, didn't you? Sort of 2-1, and for all his good work on the training ground, players want to follow someone who's a winner. You're getting results, and you're thinking, well, yeah, this guy, really knows what he's doing, and I think he's got that. Steve's right, that aura. That's a big word. He's played for some big clubs, and you don't get any bigger than Bayern Munich. He's been around, top class, world class footballers in his time playing. He's ultra professional. Say they had that great December, which everyone start to believe. And I think the impressive thing as well is obviously they had a bit of a dodgy January, and then they obviously kicked on massively after that. And I think an interesting thing as well is that 2 of the really big games, if you like, where they've learned this season, it's probably in defeats, isn't it? Everyone points to the Chelsea game as being the game breaker, but it was interesting. I thought what he said in the press last week. He mentioned the Cardiff game as well, very early in his reign. I mean, if you think Cardiff are a bit of a prototype championship strong physical team at the best, aren't they?
Yeah.
They sort of battered Barnsley on the day, and I think he's a really smart guy, and he learned so much from that. And I thought that was really interesting, and just a really smart cookie, and he's just been different class, hasn't he, in every aspect.
He mentioned, didn't he, the games he's learned from are Cardiff, Chelsea, and then Brentford.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good with stats. I can't remember us losing 2 games in a row since Ismail took over. We might have done. Maybe during January we'll have done, but I can't. He always seems to, if there is a back defeat, we always come back and either draw or win the next match. I mean, I could see Steve Conk sort of slowly turning because they're taking.
It's no good asking me, mate. I haven't got my carer with me. Well, my carer's not here, so I don't know.
Well, I think before this, I did a little bit of a few stats, and I think one of the things that jumped up was a bit that term bounce back ability, because what you were saying about some of the defeats, there was a couple of games that stood out for me. The defeats, they lost to Bournemouth 4-0 at home in front of the Sky cameras, and Bournemouth just looked top class at that part. I thought they're going to win the league, or they'll push Norwich all the way.
Yeah.
But they bounced back, and they had, I think it was Wickham on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night after it, and it was a bad weather, and it was a proper slog, and they made it difficult. But they won it 2-1, and a few people commented and said 12 months ago they'd have drawn that, they'd have lost that game. And it was like when they lost at Swansea in the league, they bounced back with a couple of victories against Huddersfield and Rotherham over Christmas. Yeah. And it's that kind of, and it's not just that run after the Chelsea game. They lost at Cardiff and then won at Derby and beat Forest at home. And it just jumps out at you that, and I always used to think, like Alex Ferguson always used to say, if his team went on a big run and then they lost he'd straight away go, right, go back on another run. You've got to go another 15 games unbeaten. And it's almost like what we've been saying about Ismail. He almost then sets the bar again and goes, right, we've lost. You've got to bounce back and go on another run. And that's kind of what they've done. They've gone on little mini runs. And I think suddenly you get 6 points out of 9 then, as opposed to roll on from a defeat to a couple of draws. They bounce back, and that's what's kept them in that sort of top 6, because they've just bounced back.
Yeah, and that's what got him the job almost, isn't it? Because that's what the team was unable to do under Struber. 3 draws in the first 7 matches. But we could never find that winner. Steve, for you, obviously, you're going to meet him, not in person, because you sat in the away stand, but on Monday.
Well, I'll be waving.
Of course.
I'm sure he knows who I am.
Of course he will. Of course he will. What is it that, as a fan, you like about him? Is it just that he makes our team win and gets us to the playoffs? Or is there something when you hear him in the press before matches, post-match, that you think, that's what we've been missing?
No, I think the thing with Ismail, which is so much different. Struber used to stand on edge at box and, shout a few things now and again, or it seemed to be like that. But you look at Ismail, and again, you just look at his demeanour, the way that he is. Football fans like to see a manager that's getting involved. There's not many that say, oh yeah, I like my manager. Just sit down there for 90 minutes and, don't bother saying no. You don't hear football supporters say that. You want your manager to be as involved as you are. So you look at Ismail, and he's always stood up. It's very, very rare you see him sat down. In fact, I can't remember him sitting down. He's always watching. He's always moving. He's always shouting. And some
Usually
people might say,
well,
unless he's going to sort him out, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Supporters, let's face it, we are simple folk. We like a footballer who will run through a brick wall, and we like a manager that's going to get involved. And I think the thing with Ismail is he does get involved. You can see that it's his life, it's his passion.
Yeah.
But he speaks so well as well. He talks about the game. He talks about strengths, weaknesses, players, tactics, and what have you. And when he does speak, people listen to him. And I think now, unfortunately for us, other people are now listening to him.
One of the differences for me, I think it's hard because you can say it's his man management, but I don't know, because I'm never at training. But I found examples of, for instance, Struber. I can't remember what game it was, but Civic made a mistake and it cost us a goal, and he didn't come back second half.
Wow.
Valerian Ismail very much seems like the manager that knows these are young, and the only way to rectify a mistake is by not doing it again, especially in that match, isn't it? He brought
Civic ended up in bloody Belgium, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he went to Heart. Yeah, he went to Heart in Belgium. Again, not a minute of football. He trained, but he never got a single minute of football, but he brought him back. People were worried last week because obviously a little niggle for Alex Mowat. Even without Mowat, we faced Norwich and we gave him one hell of a game. Jasper Moon, what have you seen from him in the press conferences, Leon, that has any player ever said that he does anything different to the other coaches? Or is it just that, they can knock on the door if they say, I feel like this, or I don't know what to do with that? Because to me, he's just one scary dude. But he can be because we're in the playoffs.
Yeah, he looks the part, doesn't he? I mean, he was obviously a tall, strong centre-half back in the day. And you mentioned Toby Civic as well. That's a good example, isn't it? I mean, he'd obviously, he'd had the time in Belgium. He'd not played. I mean, before that, he'd been to Hearts. That had got stopped because of COVID, and he'd got glandular fever. He'd obviously been pushed on the outside by Struber. He probably came back to Barnsley thinking, well, I don't know what's my future going to be. Am I going to be a part of it? And straight away, Struber sort of took his arm round him, if you like, and said, look, I've seen your clips. I like you. You get your chance here, and that must have been massive for Civic in his season. That's really good management, isn't it? Man management. Yeah. I think equally as well. I mean, I don't know the full ins and outs, but he obviously saw something he didn't like in Elliot Samoes, in terms of taking things perhaps seriously on the training ground, and he made his man out very quickly about him, and he said, look, I can't be having this, and he moved him on. And Yeah, I think he's new school and old school, isn't he? I think he's got old school man management values, but new school in terms of his approach on the on the training ground. And he's great in press conferences. I know he can be a little spiky sometimes. I know that a few teams have had digs, rival managers at Barnes' style, and he's jumped in and really defended the corner. But he likes winning, doesn't he? I mean, that's clear. And he's a winner, and when his standards aren't reached, he clearly lets players know about it.
Yeah. And Ian, he took over a squad that was probably a bit low on confidence, maybe still, 10-15% elation of staying up. And the first changes that he sort of made is he's put Woodrow back in the number 9 position rather than sort of deep at number 10, and Alex Mowat slightly further up the pitch. I mean, they were quick wins. But we also saw, like Leon says, Semawes, Clark O'Dore, he's on the bench every single match. I can't remember him having more than maybe 10 minutes throughout the season if he's had any time. Leon, do you think that certain managers just stick with certain players? Because that's how it came over to me. For Struber, it felt to me was very much like, these are my guys that are going to do it. He didn't trust Berg, so Berg went out, but Ritzmaier was week in, week out, and a lot of fans never really saw that much or that consistency in Ritzmaier. As a fan, how did you see that, Ian?
No, I think you're right. I think Struber had his favourites, and a lot of the supporters wondered why Ritzmaier was getting picked every week. Whereas Ismail's come in and he definitely set his bar high from the word go, and he did. Players got shipped out. You could just sense with the quotes he was giving that were he was making a point, but almost kind of saying, well, the door's not shut for some of them. You can come back, but you've got to basically be professional. And he clearly set it out very early on, and 99% of the squad bought into it. So yeah, I think the terminology of old school and new school is absolutely bob on, because you could imagine he's the type that he'll roll at you, but he'll also put an arm around you. And I'm sure there are various players out there that some need the arm around them and some need the rollicking, and he knows which ones need which at the right times to do it as well. And you see how he, at the final whistle, how he embraces his players and almost squeezes them to death. But you can just sense that they will go through brick walls for this man, and that's been evident all season. And I think there was something written not long ago, that the town have become very proud of the team, and the fact that during this difficult time they are sweating, blood, sweat and tears for the cause, and that's from the manager. He set the stall out, and the players have followed and gone with him.
Steve's back in video. Steve, we've done various interviews in the Team Behind the Team feature where we talk to the secretary and other people. The parting shot of the previous manager, still early in the season, was that he felt that the board didn't share his ambition. Surely he must have maybe a bit of scrambled egg on his face now, because the board backed this manager with a strike called Daryl DK and Carlton Morris, who have done reasonably well for the club. Somebody like a Michael Solbauer, age 30, got a contract, obviously, earlier in the summer to remain a Barnsley player, where normally 26, 27 is the cutoff. Do you feel that maybe there is more trust in Ismail because of the results that they're getting?
I think after probably what happened with Stendhal and then what happened with Struber, I think the board's sort of changed the perspective a little bit. I think they were going down a road that wasn't helping the club. Yeah, we know all about the stats-based players and looking at the spreadsheets and all that sort of thing. But I think before actually Struber went, we had all the queries about the stadium, what's going to happen. That came out, and I mean, that's not being resolved either. But it's as though with Ismail, they've sort of tried to change what could possibly have been set in stone before. They've probably looked at themselves and thought, well, hold on a minute, maybe if we do this a little bit differently, it'll work out better, not just for the club, but because let's face it, there were dissenters in the crowd. people were, about the board and about signings and stuff like that. And it's as though they've taken it all on board. And I'm not saying they've changed everything, but you've got to say that they must have looked at it and thought, well, perhaps we can do this a little differently, do that a little differently. And let's face it, signings wise, I can't say we've had a bad signing at all. They've all been all right. We didn't know about DK. Let's face it, there were some dissenters on social media when he first came, because his first game, it weren't brilliant. He just looked like a big lad that was throwing his son about. So, and you get dissenters like that on one game. You can't know about it. But it's turned out yet again to be what a shrewd bit of business. And let's be honest, if we do end up, God, I hope we do end up keeping him, what a signing that's going to be. And that is down to contacts through Dame Murphy, through Tamor, through their contacts in America. It's all down to them. They take the credit for it.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that the data-based approach they take in signing players, I think that came into question when Struber bought people in like Ritzmaier and some other Austrians and Germans, and it felt a little bit like they looked at the list, but maybe more where they came from rather than who was on the top of that.
Well, it were like his mates. It were like a boys' club to a certain extent. I mean, Ritzmaier, I was one of the first ones to say that first couple of games, he could have taken our lass's bra off with that left foot. It were fantastic. But
I could say something, but I'm not.
No, don't kill me. But it were just as though then he weren't fighting for his place. So he'd become complacent. So then, people do get on his back. Performance goes downhill and then he's shipped out. But that's the way it is.
Yeah. And Leon, records have been set by this team again this season. The number of away wins, the winning run that we had. I was going to say not wanting to put you on the spot, but I realised I sorted out. And if you could pick, let's say, 3 players for a Yorkshire Post team of the season, obviously all Barnsley fans want at least 18 of us in, but that's not possible.
We'll get a few in, don't we?
I mean, I did an interview last week, and they asked me to highlight players and blah, blah, blah. And I actually talked about Rommel Palmer, because I think lots of people talk about everybody in the team, except maybe for the goalkeeper, for Civic, and for Rommel Palmer, because everybody talks about the front three. Everybody talks about Britton and Styles and DK. Who have been the sort of the standout performance, and that might not be the number of games they played or how often they scored. Who've been standout performers for you this season for Barnsley so far?
Oh well, there's been a hell of a lot, hasn't it? Let's face it. I think if I had to pick 3, I would definitely go. You've got to go for Alex Mowat. He's the leader of the pack, isn't he? And he's done a pretty possible impersonation of Conor Hourihane, hasn't he, from a few years ago? I mean, that
who's that?
That battle. I mean, that battle. On a bit of a side note, that'll be fantastic, won't it? I mean, whoever gets top side of that could go a fair way in terms of who's going to actually progress. But I'd probably go with Alex, and I'd definitely go with Mads Andersen as well. I mean, I think in terms of his,
definitely.
If you look at his stats, his interceptions, clearances, all those sort of things, he figures very highly in terms of the championship, doesn't he? And he obviously came back from the lockdown a different player, didn't he? And I think in terms of his mentality, his approach. I mean, I remember watching at the end of last season. I don't know what you guys thought. It's as if somebody had just got hold of him and said, "Look, just clear your lines. That's the first thing. Don't put your foot on the ball and think you're Alan Hansen. Just play the percentages, clear your lines." He reads the game well. He's not lightning fast, but he's fast enough, if that sort of makes sense. And he's been ultra consistent for me this season. And
do you think we're not having fans in those helped him as well?
Possibly,
come on as much as he has, because he got a fair bit of stick, didn't he?
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think his last game. I seem to remember, was it the Birmingham game? It was about February last year, wasn't it? And Barnsley lost, and he made a mistake, I think, for the goal.
Yeah,
he did. Then he sort of came out, I think, didn't he, the firing line. Then we had COVID, and he's come back. He's probably eased into it a bit that way, but I think he's grown mentally stronger, and having Hellick next to him, Solbauer as well. I mean, Hellick as well. I think I'm going to say Callum Britton as well. A word from him. I mean, he obviously came from MK Dons, no experience of the Championship. He came, was it the start of October? He's been fantastic, hasn't he? He looks the sort of player. I think the biggest tribute maybe, don't we think? He looks like he's been here for years, doesn't he? I mean, he's a ball of energy. He gets through so much work down that right, disciplined in his defending, and supplements the attack on the right, where possible. And he's had a terrific season. He's a great age, and he's another one. I'm sure that clubs are going to be starting to look at him. But let's hope he stays at Barnsley.
Yeah.
Ian, Leon just mentioned a few players there. Do you think there's any danger that if we don't make it to Wembley and subsequently into the Premier League, that some of these, Barnsley would need to be really strong? Because playing at the level we have done, the results we have got, and obviously going into the playoffs, there's lots of eyes on these young lads, aren't there? Because for certain clubs, these are just at the right age. They've got that experience under the belt, but they can still be moulded into maybe something that would suit any other team. And who are the dangers for you, player-wise, that could maybe leave if we don't get up there?
Could be most of the playing squad, to be fair. I think it is. It's a tough one, isn't it? Crikey, there'll be enough people looking at the manager, never mind the players. If they don't make it this time, it's still been a special season, and I said at the weekend they have got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain, and the other three teams have got everything to lose with these playoffs. They've got a lot more riding on it. So if they don't go, I just think the board have got to be strong, the owner, they've all got to be strong and try and keep them at least for another 12 months. Some of them, some players might want to go, you don't know, their heads might get turned, but you just hope that they're a bit strong and they say no. They've tied them down for long contracts and try and convince, well, hopefully the atmosphere at the club is so positive as it seems to be that they're going to want to stay and do another 12 months and have another crack and at the Championship. That's always the danger, isn't it? You look at the side that Heckingbottom had a few years ago, and what great players they had, Burhane and Winnall, etc., and Hamill, and it all kind of, they sold the crown jewels, didn't they? And it fell apart. And I just hope that they can learn, the club can learn from that and try and keep as much of this group together as they can.
Steve, for you, who's been the biggest revelation this season?
I've got to agree with Leon. I'm a big fan of Mads Andersen. Like I said before, it was a toss-up between him and Hellick for player of season. I just think he's come on so much from that last game last season when he were called from a pig to a dog, and he was poor. He made a shocking mistake, and I think if Struber had still been here, he'd have gone. He'd have probably packed in and become a milkman or something like that, more than likely. But no, I think not having fans in has helped him. I've got to be honest about that. But I think with Ishmael coming in and him being a centre half in his own right, he's seen what Anderson's got, and he's brought it out of him, and you can see now he's going to be, he's nearly there, but he's going to be a really cultured, ball playing centre half in the likes of Harry Andersson, that sort of thing. I think he could be as good quite easily. Same with Hellick. Hellick has been absolute rock and popped up with goals as well. So for me, as I say,
I think the thing with Anderson, I think both of you are absolutely spot on with it. I think I looked at him last season and he always had an error in him in the game. Yes. And it was always a high profile one. It'd lead to a goal. Yeah. And you felt for him, but and he had the ball at his feet and you just kept thinking, keep it simple. And like you say, don't think you're Alan Hansen or somebody like that. Yeah. And I think that's probably what Ismail's done. He's probably just, like you say, he's an ex-centre-half himself, put his arm around him and said, look, just play it simple. We're not, you don't have to be anything fancy. It's a tough league. You just play it simple. And I think that's, and obviously the crowd not on his back. I mean, you get 13,000 people on your back, you're going to feel it, aren't you?
Yeah.
But I think, true, he's cut those errors out and he's made the game look very simple and he makes it look quite
and I
easy
think
at times as well.
Positional sense as well.
Yeah, and that has an effect, doesn't it? Because if you have defenders with a mistake in them that can cost you goals, surely that filters through the midfield and up front because you're working twice as hard, always catching up. He's just doing the simple things easy. And he will probably find out that if a ball comes and you hoof it into Rolls Edge or over the West End, you get a round of applause because that's all we ask, isn't it? I don't ask him to go past 4 or 5 players, but look at his assist because actually in set pieces, he's become... scored a couple of goals, but actually set pieces. He's got 5 or 6 assists, I believe, this season, maybe probably from corners and free kicks. And there is really, I suppose there is a consensus that it's probably very easy to set up a team, well, maybe not the front 3, but who's going to start for Barnsley against Swansea. Looking at the Swansea side, Leon, they're a very good side. I mean, I've picked out, as I've done before, Conor Hourihane, because I think he's a match winner. Not only a genuinely really, really nice person, he is a fantastic footballer. Andre Ayew, same. But we mustn't forget, these are 30 and 31. The pace and energy that Barnsley's got, if you look through the Swansea side, it's an ageing side, isn't it? Is that something you think? Because they found us out, but I think Valir Ismail knows better now how to set up against those sides that play that type of football to try and catch you out. What's your thought? Can that be? It's on our side because we're a far younger squad, but will that help the Reds, or can you say actually with age comes experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're reasonably well balanced, though, aren't they? They've got people like Connor Roberts and Jamal Lowe as well. I mean, I think the fascinating thing for me is what formation they actually play, because they were getting success out of 3-5-2. Then they sort of switched it to 4-3-3, didn't they? And there's a lot of talk that they'll go back to 3-5-2 for these playoff games because they've obviously played that way against Barnsley and went direct as well, and it sort of worked. And I suppose I think they were probably the first team to go a little bit long, weren't they, to counter Barnsley's way of playing. So that'll be fascinating to see which way they go. I mean, you think they probably would do that and have the two up front. I think there'll be really sort of interesting tactical games. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily read too much into the fact that Swansea have done the double over Barnsley. It's a separate competition now, isn't it? And I mean, just a fascinating contest, and I wouldn't be too surprised if it was quite cagey on Monday, and it all goes back to Wales. It could even even a draw, even Swansea, even if Swansea nicked it, I wouldn't be obviously disappointing in some respects for Barnsley. Let's hope it isn't, but I wouldn't be too massively downcast. I think it will. I would have thought it'll go quite deep into the game in Wales in terms of who wins this tie, and all set fair, it should be a cracker. I mean, obviously the fans are there, small percentage of fans, which is great, but it could be a bit like knockout Champions League game, really tactical, and not much of a quarter given in the first one.
We talked about Alex Mowat earlier, Ian. How important is it, that he's? I know he only missed a match for it was precaution, but he is training. Obviously, he will be playing. Is this one of those matches that's won or lost in midfield for Barnsley?
Could be when you've got a match up with Hourihane.
Grimes as well, isn't he?
There's battles all over the pitch. I think you look at Leon mentioned, and I made the same notes: Hourihane, Jamal Lowe, Andre Ayew, and there's an argument to be said: have they got the legs? But then you've got the experience. You give Lowe or Ayew a sniff in the box, and it's in the back of the net. You concede a free kick on the edge of your box. Hourihane gets the ball, you're panicking straight away. So, back to your question, I suppose that is a key battle, but I think there's battles all over the pitch. Anderson, Hellick, I've got to watch Ayew, Lowe, them type of players. It could be, there's going to be battles all over. I wouldn't just highlight midfield, although it is a key battle.
Steve, the scenario sort of changed over the last few weeks of where we were finished, who we were going to play. In your heart of hearts, is Swansea the best of or would you have preferred Brentford?
Go on, I'll answer that. The old generic answer. All 3 games would have been difficult.
You could work for the club.
I could work for a club, eh? Boris, get ready, son. I'm after your job. No, you know what I mean. Out of all of them, if I was like you say, heart of hearts, I'm glad we avoided Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I know they're on a bit of a bad run, but they've got millions and millions of pounds worth of strikers and stuff like that. Yeah. So in a way, I'm glad we avoided them. I've got to be honest, I don't think age makes one ha'porth of difference against Swansea. Like you said, it's experience. That Andre Ayew frightens me to death. I think he could be a real game changer, probably more than Uran will be. And Brentford, dare I say that we could be Brentford's bogey team? I don't know. They always say that you've got a bogey team, and maybe we are Brentford's, which would be nice to think, if we can get past Swansea, that ideally it'd be Brentford in final. That's just me wishing, I suppose.
Don't forget, Brentford have been in 9 playoff finals and lost them all, haven't they? They've never really won one. So it could be.
You had to throw that one in, didn't you? So now
just in case Billy the Bee from Besotted is listening, we are aware.
I think Steve's spot on. Just Carlo, just quickly. I think he's spot on about Bournemouth. They're the ones I might have wanted to avoid. It's just the weight of numbers, isn't it? Their squad really. I mean, there's pressure on them to go. They should have finished in the top 2, really, shouldn't they? You look at the sort of squad they've got, and if they don't go up, it'd be a major disappointment. So I'm pretty glad Barnsley haven't got them. If things weren't going necessarily right for Bournemouth, they'd just bring on a couple of big hitters from the bench, wouldn't they? Yeah.
It would be, though, Ian, an unfashionable fairy tale, and gives hope to loads of clubs. Should Barnsley do it, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. And I think I said on the last podcast that there's always a team that comes along and gets in the playoffs that you don't expect. There's always the usual, like in previous years, it's been the Fulhams and the Swanseas and teams like that. But there's always a side that comes along and is a surprise package, and they tend to be the ones who've got nothing to lose and perform and sometimes go up. And this year it's Barnsley. But yeah, absolutely. On the shoestring, a couple of right appointments, it all clicks. And it's not just the results, it's the performances as well. The football's been great to watch as well.
Yeah. Just to close off then, I'm not going to ask for sort of, forecast of scores, because I think it's incredibly hard. If the season would have finished now, Steve, just can you summarise in 5 words what this season has meant for you? And that's for all 3, so you can start thinking. I've put Steve on the spot because I know him very well and he's very good with words. So in 5 words, how would you describe Barnsley season this season? I can play some music if you want. We're sponsored by thetennisstore.com. And there will be a competition question.
Fill in for 10 minutes.
Yeah. There will be a competition question. They've given us loads of merchandise to give away during these playoffs. So there will be a competition question on Twitter. And I just keep yapping away while I see Steve's cogs turning and turning and turning.
So, go on then. 5 words to describe this season for me would be surprising, exciting, frustrating, exhilarating at times. Yeah, I've got to say that. And it's turning now to be quite scary.
Okay.
It is, because we're 3 games away, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? We could be playing the likes of Jurgen Klopp next season and stuff like that. And it's fairy tales.
If we get a decent result on Monday night, next week's show will start with Bon Jovi. Oh, we're halfway there. You know what I mean? Leon, you're a man of many words, a very good word.
Oh, God.
How would you put that? 5 words.
Magnificent, compelling, record breaking.
Is that class as 2 words?
No, it's 1.
You're right. Yeah.
No, put a hyphen in between. We'll just
ruthless in some respects. The last one's got to be Ismail, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Ian, what about you?
I think most of them have been used, but I think the Reds are going up. How's that? That's 5.
Oh, nice one.
Listen,
that one. Yeah.
I think to all the fans that are listening, to those that are lucky enough to get a ticket in the ballot, enjoy. And we interviewed Sean Dooley 2 weeks ago, and Sean came out with a saying: if you're going, whether that's on Monday or next season, whether in the Premier League or in the Championship, we need to be more Val. Don't start whistling when one of your players in your shirts make a mistake. Be like Val and encourage them and get behind them. So for those going on Monday, be more Val. Steve, enjoy yourself. Just because I'm not going, that doesn't mean you can FaceTime me and WhatsApp me and send me pictures and everything else.
I'll get you on Facebook, mate. I'll film it for you.
I'm sure you don't, because you're not you're not allowed.
I won't do that. No, I follow. Other streams are not available. Please don't.
It's not on iFollow either, because it's on Sky.
Then no dodgy downloads of Sky either. Then
I think this is just what flavour icing can be on the cake, isn't it? Because we've got the cake, we've got the icing, and if we don't make it, I just hope that fans, remain true to the club and just realise what a mammoth achievement this has been. And people talk about, the 96-97 season, but that was a season where all the way upwards. It wasn't like that. We've had management changes. We've had no fans in the stadium. There's been no 12th man. So whatever happens, it's been an amazing and a memorable season. We will be back next week to look at what happened last Monday. Well, next Monday, actually. It'll be last Monday when we do it, if you know what I mean. Steve, thank you very much. Leon, are you going Monday, Leon?
Yes, yeah. I think I'm going for the Swansea game as well. So I have to plot my route over the Brecon Beacons or whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, good luck with that.
And enjoy yourself. And I've said it before, not only because you're on the show. I just enjoy. You can have match reports, can't you? You can have match report that in the 3rd minute somebody passed and it was a goal because we went over the line and back in there. But you always flavour it with. There's that bit of information that makes it just so relatable to football fans. So please keep doing that, because we're thoroughly enjoying it. And Ian, you as well. Let's see where we go, and whatever you do, I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon, mate.
Yes, thanks for having me on. Cheers, good to see you.
No problem. You've been listening to the Reds Report. Enjoy Monday, whether you're at home on Sky or like Steve. Be like Steve and be like Val. I talk well, but get behind the Reds.